I think in CABE, you should change all of this, the theme. CABE, keep your children out of your basement. That's it. Now, forget about all those other 21st century, 25th century skills. Keeping your children out of your basement. How do we do that? It's actually not very easy. The data are not in our favor right now. In the US, I know we want our children to go to college, but right now, 50%, over 50% of college students in the US do not have a job, cannot find a permanent job. That's the same thing in Spain, in China, in South Africa. Globally, colleges do not guarantee anything. It's just a measure what you've done doesn't mean what you know how to do. We don't know that. On average, in the US, we have college students owe about $23,000 in college debt. The US college debt has gone above our credit card debts, over $1 trillion. It's a lot of money. College is no guarantee. Kindergarten is no guarantee either, by the way, if you remember that one. Now, what has happened really in our life? We have entered a new world that demands us to rethink our education paradigm. What's the new world like? I have, by the way, I have made a lot of different slides. You can download it from this place on my website. I put all the slides together, so I'm not making special slides for any conference anymore because I'm just pick and choose. Plus, I'm held accountable by the number of slides I can produce. So I'm getting paid. Make a lot. That's why I put a lot of slides together. You know about accountability. What's called data-driven accountability system. Okay. Now, that's where you can find it. And the various things I talk about will show up in two books. One is called Catching Up or Leading the Way, published by ASCD a while back. And the new one is I think it's out there. You can buy it. Now, let me show you some data to think about this. Why it's so hard to keep our children out of our basement? This is an interesting graph. It's basically, that's the core of last presidential debate. Do you remember of Obama and there's another guy called Romney? You remember that? Right, happened. It did happen. Okay, did not dream. Okay, so they had a big debate. The three, I think, domestic issue, one international. And the core of their debate is about this graph. The loss of manufacturing middle-class jobs. In the US, over the last several decades, traditional middle-class jobs in construction, manufacturing, all these domains have been disappearing in the millions. And they, of course, as politicians, they blame China. Remember, that's why Obama and Romney, they were competing for your votes by showing who hates China more. That was them trying to do this. Did not work out that way, but half true. Actually, it's only half true. Millions of jobs indicated by the red line shows have lost to two things. Outsourcing, not necessarily all China. China actually is complaining jobs being outsourced to Vietnam already, so that's a different story. And automation, machines. The blue line shows our manufacturing value has increased. Fewer people making more and more and more things. We've become more productive, more efficient. Which means what? We don't need as many people. So today's situation in the US is called the hollowing out economy. Hollowing out means the middle is disappearing, the top and bottom are growing up fast. How did that happen? The middle, as I said, is gone. Why is the top growing? Well, you are in California, you know this very well. The top have been the driving engine for creating new businesses, new products, new services all the time. The only difference is that traditionally we had one person who can create a new line of products. They employ millions of people. Today, they don't. Facebook does not need factory workers. Neither does Twitter. Facebook, this how much? This billions of dollar company, they employ fewer than 10,000 people. New innovation, a lot of times, they do not create the same kind of jobs. So we have an economic resetting, not an economic recession. The economics data will show that we have been recovering as an economy. GDP is growing up, profits going up, companies investing, only thing that going up, jobs, middle class jobs. But the bottom class is growing too, the lower class. Why? Mark Zuckerberg still needs someone to bring him coffee. And bringing coffee doesn't pay you much, okay? That's why the low-level, low-skilled labor is growing in the US. So how do we save the middle class? Who are the middle class traditional? Traditional middle class are the millions of people who have graduated from high school, maybe not, who have learned to be good employees. Good employees. What are good employees? Employees with a minimum set of skills, who have common skills. Employees who are very obedient. Employees who do not become too creative. We don't want. Henry Ford never wanted a Lady Gaga on his assembly line. You don't want a car assembled by Lady Gaga. There's no way. You don't want that, right? So our traditional schools have been trying to follow this model. This is the traditional education model, which is trying to reduce human diversity, which is trying to reduce individual differences into a few employable skills. That's our traditional model. Most educations practice that. That's why I said English only, Spanish is bad, we don't need that. Chinese is bad, we don't need that. We just make this. And this is no difference from making sausage, right? We take all those things, come back, we squeeze you through 12 years, 16 years, turning into good sausage. Well, but of course there's different grades of sausage. We have the Harvard sausage, we have the Stanford sausage, then we have the community college sausage, different kind of sausage. But nonetheless, they're all sausage. We measure you the same way. The difference is only in quantity, not in quality. How much do you know math? I know more than you do, then I'm a Harvard sausage. And then you know less, then you are just college. That's what we do. SATs, GP, it's all about compliance. So in that model, what we do? We start by defining what students should do, should know. We don't care about what they bring, we don't care about the background. Then we measure a school by how well you can turn all these people into good sausage, indicated by test scores. That's what we do. That really used to work. It was beautiful. Traditionally, when you want to prepare people to work in the assembly line, if we had millions of jobs that demand the same skills, good. Now the future, what we need, as I said before, the new economy demands everybody to become creative. Everybody has to become one or more of a Zuckerberg. You have to be creative and entrepreneurial. If you don't believe me, read my book. Now, if you still don't believe me, read it twice, you'll believe it. Now, there's a lot of data to indicate, but what do we think about this thing? So what I'm going to show you some historical data to say. You want to ask, has any big education system been successful in cultivating individual talents, creativity, and entrepreneurship? I would say no. All education systems around the world have been pursuing this model. Because for a long time, that's what we needed. That's what we need. So American today's education reform has been driven by this model. Because when we examine the system, compared to many education systems around the world, we are not as good as a sausage-making machine as that in China, or perhaps in Finland, perhaps in Japan, all those places. So what I would like to suggest, let's take a look at this thing. We don't have great systems. that produce this deliberately. But we have some systems that have been less successful sausage making, but more successful in preserving or tolerating diversity and creative people. That's the past. So let's learn from the past and move to the future. What kind of past do we have? I got three big questions. One has to do with China. China is recently have risen to become this great powerhouse of everything. If you haven't tried being a Chinese, recently you should give it a shot. It's really nice to be Chinese nowadays. I feel good. Feels great. Now, it's really nice. Try. Yeah. But they will ask you to do math problems. You can't do it. Now, China. Everybody talks about China, and we feel bad. Obama this year only mentioned China twice in his State of Union address. Used to be a lot more, more. We had the enemy like Romney, but no. Why did not China have a party? I don't mean the governing Communist Party, which is big. This is a party to celebrate. China had a tremendous, outstanding achievement recently in education. China was #1 on the PISA. And I'm sorry, Tove, China knocked Finland out of its balance. Finland used to be #1 twice in I think 3 times. And by the way, do you know what the PISA stands for? No? You know what it is? No? Okay, fine, don't. You don't need to know. It's a French word anyway, it just doesn't matter. Now, it's basically an international assessment of 15-year-olds run by the organization called OECD. Whenever you read newspaper, they said American students rank like 34th out of 35th. That's from this kind of data. It's international test of 70-some countries. It's so important. It's become the gold standard of education quality in different countries. And who would know Finland before other than your organization? Finland was a tiny little place, right? Most times you're sleeping or shooting moose, right? That's what happens. Now after PISA, everybody knew Finland because they're supposed to have the best education system for a long time. Until China came along, China's Shanghai students knocked it out and became #1 in 3 categories: math, science, literacy, and science. And those are the top 10 countries. If you look hard, US is not there. You can't find it. The screen is not big enough to fit in the US. US is way below. America is below, but you can't find it. Now, these are the top countries. China was #1. China should celebrate. By the way, if you look at the top 5 countries except Finland, what do they have in common? This is what everybody's talking about, the strong performance on the PISA we should learn from. They're the leading education systems. What do they have in common? They're all East Asian countries. When you are people trying to figure out how do you improve your academic achievement, just read this graph. It's very easy. Take Finland out so you can eat. They're all chopsticks using countries. You use chopsticks to improve academic achievement. Just do something. It explains 90% of the variation. That's pretty good, right? That's a very, very good statistical tool. And Finland, you can say, well, we call that anomaly. You can ignore that data point. I'm sorry about that. Now, China had this great achievement. China was beautiful, and with this a stunning performance. This was only 3 years ago. Arnie Duncan, do you know Arnie Duncan? Really? It's very hard to have a Secretary of Education so famous unless you've done something really bad, right? It's hard. It's not serious. So Duncan read this data, said, that's an absolute wake-up call for the US. Well, we should have waken up a long time ago, but that's a wake-up call. And now, President Obama said this is a Sputnik moment, referring to the 1957 Soviet Union Sputnik satellites, So US suddenly paid attention to China. A book came out called Surpassing Shanghai by the National Center for Education and the Economy, and they believe China has everything right, and that sets the American education reform agenda based on the high-performing countries. This title really annoyed me. Surpassing Shanghai as a national goal for American education made me feel like I have moved to the wrong country. Maybe I should have stayed in China. Now, more importantly, it indicates a decline in American dreams. America as a nation has been built on big, big dreams. We built a country without kings and lords. That was beautiful, right? We had a country that ended bravely at that time. Slavery, we can't do more. We still haven't done a lot. We have a country that sends someone to the moon. Those are big dreams. Americans' dreams have become smaller ever since I came to this country 20 years ago. At least I noticed that, Ever since I came to this country, we had presidents have very tiny dreams. President Bush, I mean the junior Bush one, remember that? Okay. I came and he had this law called No Child Left Behind, and the dream was to make sure everybody can read in this country. Reading may be hard personally for him, but it cannot be a national dream for the most developed country. It's a national floor, it's a national guarantee. That's not a national dream. That's illiteracy is a problem for sub-Saharan countries, not for the US. Now today, we want to surpass Shanghai. That just doesn't make sense. We are going after the wrong goal. Just simple test scores. And not only that, actually many Western countries have been going after China, say China has the best education system. And recently someone said China has the cleverest education. And actually I'm writing a book about this. I'm trying to trace back 3,000 years to say how it has become so great a sausage maker. Now, Australia has been saying China has the best education because its students are 2 years ahead in mathematics. America has not only used Chinese education as a way to change its education, but also has used China in almost every other places. The next quote is going to be amazing. This is from a Pennsylvania governor, Ed Randell, a few years ago, and they had a team in Philadelphia, a football team. I think it's the Eagles, something like that. So that was had to cancel or postpone a football game because of winter storm. Because of snow. You guys never seen that, but snow can disrupt things on the East Coast. Anyway, so he was unhappy about that change. So he went on radio and he had this to say to the country. We've become a nation of wussies. The Chinese are kicking our butt in everything. If this was in China, do you think the Chinese would have caught off the game? People would have been marching down to the stadium. They would have walked. They would have been doing calculus on their way down. That was. Now that's a lot of admiration for the Chinese, by the way, which we don't really play football, but that's fine. And we don't do calculus in the stadium either. And so now, England, the British Education Secretary Michael Gove wrote this in the Telegraph recently. He said, "I'm happy to confess. I'd like us to implement a cultural revolution just like the one they've had in China, like Chairman Mao. We've embarked on a long march to reform our education system. China has a lot of new admirers in education. Everybody thinks China is doing great, indicated by test scores. People want to learn from it, books written. Everyone except the Chinese themselves. They don't like it. China is not happy about its education at all. Premier Wen Jiabao said, we got to reform our education. We got to produce Steve Jobs. And people say you can't have Steve Jobs because your education somehow stifles them. And China, if you look at any innovation data, Chinese with 20% of world's population, 9% of world's GDP, 12% R&D expenditure, that's research and development, but only 1% patent finance recognized by international patent offices, not patents filed within domestic offices, international organizations. That's not encouraged. And China, with an aging population, which with rising labor price, low-level jobs, are going to exit, are moving out to other countries, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, and all those places. Like the US has lost those jobs to other places. It's happening. China has to upgrade its economy, and the upgrading requires innovative, creative, knowledge workers, not inexpensive, cheap laborers. China needs to change its education. China was 1.3, almost 1.4 billion people. Statistically speaking, you should have more baby Steve Jobs born in China than in the US. Right? 4 times more. What happened? They blame the education. Somehow, the baby Steve Jobs did not turn into big Steve Jobs throughout the education system. Question number 1, why did not China celebrate this great education achievement in terms of test scores on the PISA? By the way, PISA is going to be released this year. You will see China on top again. I'm pretty sure Finland too. It's white. Second question has to do with Asians. Model minorities. You've heard of this term. Model minorities. This is a phrase that's been used in the U.S. history to deny the existence of racism. The basic is that look at the Asians. They're happily doing their laundry, they're doing all those things, and then they're great, they become middle class. And if they can make it, how come other minorities cannot make it? This is denying of racism, denying of reality. That's basically. But this term continued to be used. Used to refer to Asian kids, Asian parents. Have you seen the Professor Amy Chua's Tiger Mom book? You remember that? That's right. So the Asian model minorities, Asian kids, you have a lot of them in your schools. At least, statistically speaking, they're your best kids academically. If you have AYP problem, outsource it to China. They'll solve it for you. They'll get your scores up over there. And now, historically, Asian kids have always outscored other ethnic groups on the NAEP in other domains. This is probably much more nuanced than I can explain here. We've actually worked on a book called The Myth of the Model Minority. You can read that, in more detail. But this is matched by academic performance in college admissions. Today, 5% of U.S. population are Asians, 15 to 25% are in the Ivy League enrollments. And there are many Ivy Leagues, Princeton, Harvard, Yale, they have to cap the percentage of Asian students because they're just so great in their academic records. You want SAT? We got it. SAT, we have AP, IB, whatever you want. We've got it for you. And then that's result in 24% of Stanford of Asians. 46% of UC Berkeley. You know why UC Los Angeles, short for UCLA, stands for UC lots of Asians. That's the issue over there. Now with this great, outstanding Asian academic performance, you would expect they would have similar stunning performance in life and career. But statistics show the difference. Only 2% of Fortune 500 companies' board seats are Asians. There's a lot more different data to show that somehow the outstanding academic achievement in school settings have never translated into real life performance in such level. As an Asian, we are puzzled by this. We want to know what's going on. We like to think there is racism. There is racial stereotyping. There is this glass ceiling for Asians. Of course, for Asians to be culturally proper, to be culturally appropriate, we call that the bamboo ceiling. It's can't do glass ceiling, okay. Now, that's the big question we ask as Asians. What happened? Why those two kinds of education don't connect? Connect education and life. The third one has to do with why is America still here? That's a Canadian question. Of northern neighbor, wake up, are you still down there? Now why are we still here? No. It's not a vicious question, it's actually a historical question. The historical question comes from this. You have heard today, if you read the Times, the Chronicle, you read all the time says that America education is in decline, is getting worse every day. You heard that all the time. We're in decline. But historically speaking, American education has not been in decline, is not getting worse. American education is not getting worse. American education has always been bad. By some measure, if you look somehow how bad we have been, well, 1958, we were said to be worse than Russia. 1950, if you look at the Life magazine. In the 1980s, we were worse than Japan, South Korea, and Germany, a nation at risk. Now we have movies like 2 Million Minutes, we are worse than China and India. And if you want to look at test scores, since 1960s, 1964, US participated in the first international mathematics study, 1964. Our 12th graders ranked 12th out of 12 countries. You can't be worse than that. With that record, American education can only get better, right? So for over half a century, American education has been bad, has been horrible, but it's still here, right? Still, not only here, Obama said this 3 years ago, America still has the largest, most prosperous economy in the world. No workers are more productive than ours. No country has more successful companies. These are actually facts, at least more factual than some of his other facts. And how did that happen? How come my education that's been so bad for half a century has not ruined this nation yet? I'd like to think it's immigrants like us come to save the US. No. But that's wishful thinking. I'm sorry about that. We immigrants make a huge difference. There's no question about that. But statistically speaking, we're still not enough. Out of the, think about high-tech industry, computer science, about 10% of computer engineers and scientists are foreign-born. The rest actually came out of the same bad system for half a century. So that's the question. How do we explain this? China has the best education system, supposedly, but do not have the creative talents. Asians have done so well academically, but do not achieve leadership positions as that matches. America has such a bad education for 50 years, but the country is doing fine in different ways. How do we explain this?